There is a shopping mall about 8 blocks from my apartment, and on a Sunday afternoon, you cannot walk through it. Not because it is dangerous, because there are too many people in it. Teenagers, grandmothers, entire families. A guy selling churros who's doing better than I am. And the first time I saw it, I stood there for a second thinking, this is a museum exhibit? This is what America looked like in 1985. I've seen this. I was there. I just didn't know at the time that I was watching the end of it. Hey, I'm Matt, the Americano, and I'm an American living in Bogotá, and a lot of what I do here without meaning to is time travel. This is not a video about Colombia being better than the United States. It's not political. It's not a ranking. I'm not mad at anybody. I don't have that energy. This is a video about one very specific feeling. It's the feeling of walking into a place you have not thought about in 20 years, and it's open, and it's busy, and nobody in the building knows it was supposed to die. Because here's the thing about all 10 of these. America didn't ban any of them. There was no meeting, nobody voted. We just found something slightly more convenient, one thing at a time, for about 40 years. And every single time, the thing we replaced happened to be a reason to leave the house. So today, 10 things that died in America and are still completely alive down here. So number one, the mall. Let's start with the big one. In the 1980s, the United States had somewhere around 2,500 shopping malls. Today, it's about 700, and the people who study this expect a quarter of the survivors to be gone by 2030. So we didn't lose the mall. We are still losing the mall. It's a slow one. It's been going for 30 years. It's very sad and very gradual, like a golden retriever. There is an entire genre of video on the internet now called Dead Mall. People film them. They walk through an empty mall with a camera and sad piano music, like they are documenting a shipwreck. And I want to be clear, that is a real hobby. There are American men in their 40s who will drive an hour to film a closed Sears. Now, down here, the mall is the town square. People do not come to the mall to buy something. They come to the mall to be at the mall. Grandma comes, the whole family comes. Teenagers do the thing where they walk in a large group and purchase nothing, which I am told is universal, and honestly, I'm glad somebody's still doing it. And it works because the mall down here is not just stores. There is a supermarket in there. There's a bank in there. It's a small city with a roof on it. And I think that's actually the whole system. Number two, KFC. KFC is not dying. KFC is dying in America. Those are two completely different sentences, and it took me an embarrassing amount of time to understand the difference. Here are the numbers. Between January of 2025 and the end of March 2026, KFC closed 207 restaurants in the United States. That is about 5% of every KFC in the country. In 15 months, in that same window, they opened almost 3,000 of them everywhere else. KFC has about 34,000 restaurants worldwide. 13% of the sales come from the United States. China does 27. The company opens a new KFC somewhere on earth roughly every 3.5 hours. So by the time this video is over, there's a new one somewhere, not near you. Their global CEO actually said out loud that Americans who only know the brand from America do not understand how big it is, which is a wild thing to have to explain about a company from Kentucky. I looked this up because I didn't believe it. Greensboro, North Carolina, my city, good-sized city, 300,000 plus people. I know it well. I lived there for 30 years. 5 KFCs. 5. That's all. There was a time in my life you could not get across that town without passing 3 of them. Down here, KFC is a plan. Somebody says, let's get KFC. Everybody goes, yeah, good idea. And they mean it. On Rappi, which is the delivery app that runs this country, KFC is one of the busiest restaurants on the entire platform. There's a turbo option too. Turbo, that means 10 minutes or less typically. For fried chicken. Somebody looked at the fried chicken and said, this needs to arrive faster. The restaurants are full, the delivery is instant, and nobody is embarrassed. Here's what I think happened. In America, KFC became a value brand. It got into a price fight with every other chicken place in the country, and it lost. And now walking in there feels like a decision you made because you gave up. Down here, it never got demoted. Same chicken, same recipe, same kernel. The only thing that changed was whether people felt good about it. So the kernel didn't fail. We just stopped being impressed, and he went and found people who still are. Number 3, the mall arcade. So falling back into the mall for 1 minute, there is an arcade in there, a real one, loud, carpeted, slightly sticky, full of children who are not being supervised in a way that would survive an American lawsuit. And in America, the arcade died because we won. We got the arcade. It's in your pocket. Every game ever made. No quarters, no leaving the house. That should have been the happy ending. We beat the arcade. We took it home. But we didn't just replace the arcade. we replaced the room. Because the arcade was never about the games, it was about being 12 years old in a dark room, standing too close to someone, watching him play something you were not good enough to play. And you cannot download that. Nobody has built the app where a 14-year-old you've never met tells you that you're bad at something and it somehow improves your life. Also, there is a crane machine here, and the children still believe in it. That is the part that gets me. In America, we all figured out the crane machine was a lie. We had a national reckoning about the crane. Down here, hope is alive. Now, number 4, the Papelería, the copy shop. Now, this one I did not expect to have feelings about. The Papelería, the copy shop, they are every couple of blocks, sometimes 2 of them on the same block, which economically I do not understand, and I've stopped trying. Inside, there is a photocopier, a laminator, notebooks, pens, poster board, and a woman who will bind your document with a plastic spiral like it's 1998, and we're proud of it. In America, the copy shop is basically gone. We have one, technically. It's inside a shipping store, like a UPS store, or Kinko's, or maybe it's inside a Staples. But they're kind of dead because we all bought printers. And here is the thing nobody says about that. Your printer does not work. Your printer has never worked. Your printer knows when you need it. The American home printer is the only appliance that can sense fear. It is fine for 11 months. It sits there. It's quiet. You forget it exists. And then the day you need one page for something that actually matters, that is the day it decides it's a sculpture. We've all agreed to this. We looked at a building full of professional copying equipment operated by a person who does it every day for a living, and we said, no, I would rather own the problem. And that is the trade, and I don't think we did the math right. We didn't save money. We didn't save time. We just moved the failure inside our own house so that when it breaks, there's nobody to be mad at except us. The Papelería still has a guy, and the guy's machine works, and it's always got toner in it because it's his job that it works. Number 5, full-service gas. Somebody pumping your gas. In 1972, about 8% of gas stations in the United States were self-service. By 1992, it was 80%. 20 years. That is how long it took to convince an entire country to start doing a job somebody else used to do for them and to be excited about it. Today, New Jersey is the last state where you legally cannot pump your own gas. Oregon held out for 72 years and gave up in 2023. So there is exactly one place left that kept the service, and the rest of the country makes fun of it. Down here, you pull in, somebody comes out, they ask you how much, you say a number, or you say fill it, they do it. Sometimes they even clean the windshield. Sometimes they don't, and that's fine. I'm not a monster. And then you leave. You never open the door. You never touch anything. You never show up somewhere smelling like gasoline. Now, I have to be honest about something because in my efficiency video, I put American self-service on the list of things the U.S. does well. And I meant it. It is faster. But it is faster the way skipping lunch is faster. We eliminated a job so we could save about 90 seconds and a few cents a gallon. And we called that progress. And now the only human being at an American gas station is a guy behind bulletproof glass who cannot help you and does not want to. A quick break before we get back to it. 3 things. If you're in Bogotá, our next Bogotá Nomads dinner is Thursday, September 17th, 6 o'clock back at SKR. The last dinner, 145 of you showed up. This room holds 60. So if you want a seat, RSVP now. Links in the description. $8 to reserve, and you get 20,000 pesos handed back to you at the door. If it's sold out when you click, join the wait list. Seats sometimes open up. Second, if you've been watching these videos thinking, I need to actually go see Colombia for myself, come with me. October 7th through the 12th. I'm hosting a scouting trip here in Bogotá. 5 nights, $17.95 with a $500 deposit to hold your spot. Your hotel's included, private transport every day is included. You just get yourself here. And night 1, we kick it off with a welcome dinner you will never forget. A tasting menu that eats its way across Colombia, region by region. The coast, the highlands, the coffee region, course by course, and I'll walk you through every one of them. The link's in the description. And third, the Passport community is open and it's free to join. Pro and VIP unlock the relocation tools we've been building. Real cost of living data, the stay tracker, visa and tax prep, and VIP gets you on a group Zoom call with me every month. That link's below too. All right, back to the video. Number 6, shoe repair and shoe shine. In America, a shoe is a disposable object. Shoe dies, buy shoe. There is no step in between. There has not been a step in between for most of my life. The United States has lost the overwhelming majority of its shoe repair shops since the middle of the last century. And I know how that sounds. It sounds like a small thing. Down here, there's a guy, a small shop, sometimes not even a shop, just a spot. and he fixes shoes and bags and belts and a zipper if you ask nicely. And then there is the shine, which is the part that broke my brain because it is not nostalgia. It's not a costume. It's not a guy in a bow tie at a hotel doing a bit for tourists. It's a guy in the plaza with a box, and people sit down on a Tuesday morning on the way to work like it's a normal thing that a person does. And they'll even do sneakers. Sneakers. Somebody sat down with a pair of white sneakers and the guy said, yeah, I can help you. In America, if you asked somebody to shine your sneakers, they would assume you were doing a bit. They would wait for the camera. Here is what actually happened in America, and it's not villainous. We made shoes cheap enough that repairing them stopped making sense. Now that's real. That's arithmetic. And the arithmetic is correct, but the arithmetic only counted the shoe. It didn't count the guy, because the same day it stopped making sense to fix a shoe, it stopped making sense to be a person who fixes a shoe. And that guy had a corner and a stool, and he knew everybody's name, and he was there every day for 30 years. Nobody decided to get rid of him. He just stopped adding up. Number 7, the parking guy. You pull into a lot. It's empty. There are 40 spaces. You can see all 40 of them. There is no ambiguity here. This is not a hard problem. And a man appears. I don't know where he came from. There is no booth. There is sometimes a vest, and the vest is doing an enormous amount of work. And he begins to guide me into a space that I found. That is the only thing there. He waves. He points. He makes a small sound. And here's the thing. I need him now. We have made eye contact. It's a relationship. I cannot park by myself anymore. That option's gone. And then when I leave, he does the thing. He walks behind the car, puts a hand up and stops traffic that might not exist. And he waves me out with total authority, like he just did something. And I gave him some coins, and I feel great. That's the part I cannot explain to Americans. I feel great about it every time. In America, that job was replaced by a machine that eats your ticket, a gate that comes down too fast, and an app that wants you to make an account. And I have thought about this more than a grown man should. And I do not think I'm paying him to park. I think I'm paying him because for about 90 seconds, somebody was paying attention to me. Somebody was on my side. America solved parking, and in solving parking, we removed the only person in the entire transaction who was happy to see us. Number 8, the pool hall. In America, the pool hall is a memory. There are still bars with a table in the corner. The table's not level. The felt has a cigarette burn on it from before you were born. And there is no chalk. There's never any chalk. Nobody has ever found the chalk. Down here, billiards is a category of building. It's not a corner of something else. It's the thing. 10 tables, good tables. Somebody maintains them. And it's not a young man's scene. It is guys in their 60s in the middle of the afternoon on a Tuesday. The music is at a reasonable volume, which I did not know was legal. Everybody knows everybody. Somebody is losing money and enjoying it, and what America lost there was not the game. You can buy a pool table. You can put it in your basement. Some of you have. It has laundry on it. What we lost was a place where a man in his 60s has somewhere to be at 2 in the afternoon that is not at his house, and it's not his job, and does not cost anything except the game. America does not really have that anymore. We have a gym membership and a garage. Number 9, adult children at home. Living with your family. All right, this one is a little more serious, and I want to do it right. Down here, it is completely normal for a 27-year-old to live at home. Nobody is whispering about it. Their friends live at home. Nobody's keeping score. In America, moving out at 18 is the entire scoreboard. It is the thing your parents tell other parents. It is the sentence that means you did it right. And I want to be careful here because I've heard Americans say this part like it's an insult. Like the problem is that the people will go down here to not grow up. No. Here is what actually happened. America invented a rule, leave at 18 or you failed. And then over about 40 years, America priced housing so that the following rule got very hard for a lot of people. So now you have an entire generation doing the financial responsible thing and feeling humiliated about it because they are being scored against a rule that stopped working. Colombia never made that rule. Nobody moves out to prove something. Nobody moves back and calls it a failure. Grandma's in the building. And the practical effect of that is enormous. The money stays in one home. Somebody is always home. Kids get raised by more than 2 exhausted adults. Americans look at that and call it dependence. From down here, it just looks like a family that did not get taken apart and sold separately. Number 10, Christmas. In America, Christmas is a retail window. It has a start date, and the start date is determined by inventory. It opens the day after Thanksgiving. There is a countdown. There is a shipping deadline, and the entire thing is scored on whether people bought enough. There is a number on the news. A national holiday about a baby has a quarterly performance metric, and then on December 26th, it's gone. It's just over immediately. The tree is a chore now. It went from magic to yard waste overnight. Down here, December starts on the 7th. Dia de las Velitas. Candles. Everybody puts them out. The whole street does it. And then it just keeps going all month. Novenas, 9 nights of going to somebody else's house, praying, eating, and singing badly. then Christmas, and then it keeps going. Then Año Viejo, where people build a doll out of old clothes and burn it, which is either deeply symbolic or deeply flammable, and I've decided not to ask. And for most of that month, nobody is buying anything. No countdown, no shipping deadline, no number on the news. And that is the whole difference right there. In America, Christmas is a season of purchasing that we hang decorations on. Down here, it is a month of being in each other's houses, and some gifts happen. And we did not shorten Christmas on purpose either. We just optimized it until the only part left was the part you could measure. Now, an honorable mention, a man, a cart, a bell in 2026, and the bell works. He rings it, and children come out of the building. That is the same technology as 1890, and it has a 100% success rate. Amazon has drones. This guy has a bell and some ice cream. I would like to see them race. Now, here is what I actually think, and then I'll leave you alone. Nobody in America decided to get rid of any of this. There was no meeting. Nobody voted. There was no villain. What happened is that every single one of these things got beaten by something slightly more convenient, and every single one of those trades was correct. That is the part that makes it hard. The mall lost to a better store. The arcade lost to a better arcade. The copy shop lost to a printer in your house. The attendant lost to a machine that does not take a lunch break. Every one of those on its own was a good deal, but every one of them also removed a reason to stand near another person. And nobody was counting those. There is no line item for it. You can measure a transaction. You cannot measure the guy who knew your name. So America ran the numbers one decision at a time for 40 years, got the right answer to every single question, and ended up somewhere nobody actually chose. And I want to be straight with you about the other half of this. Colombia is not doing this on purpose. Nobody down here is protecting any of it. There is no preservation society for the copy shop. It is just less optimized. It has not gotten around to it yet. This is not Colombia being wise. This is Colombia being early. A lot of this is going to go. Some of it already is. The apps are here. The delivery is here. The same math that ran in America is running down here right now. And that might be the actual reason to pay attention. Not because anybody figured something out, but because for a little while longer, you can still stand inside the thing America already lost and see what it was for. So that is 10. And I want to hear the specific one from you. Not the general thing, the specific thing. The place in your hometown that's gone, that you did not think about until right now. Put it in the comments. I read them. This is not a bit. I actually read them. If you want this kind of thing quieter and in your inbox, there are a few. The passport for living abroad and comparing countries honestly. Broker for international real estate and how these markets actually work. Bogotá Nomads for our dinners and meetups here in the city. All of it's linked below. And if this video made you think of one specific building that used to be something, that is this video working. Nos vemos. Take care.